Hey, team players, and welcome back. You got Joe Rockey here with Local Football Flavor. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down a really deep dive about betting on the rookies and the risk of taking them now before the actual NFL draft, the pros and the cons of the strategies, and that's what we're going to be diving in as we're doing a best ball draft. Today is going to be full PPR. We're going to be doing this baby on Draftkings, and we'll see you right here. So yes, indeed, Bob will be jumping in here momentarily, but that's the essence of today's show is will the rookies and will investing in rookies be worth it? And that is the entire question when we're doing these drafts this early in the circumstance. Because obviously the NFL draft hasn't happened yet. Who is the best place to go? And this goes back to one of the fundamental facts of fantasy football and how do you make things successful? Well, you're successful in fantasy football when you produce results. Duh. Well, obviously, Joe. But really, what creates that is either A, you have a fantastic situation, even if you're not talented. We're looking at the Kareem Williams and the Pachecos of the world that are doing that circumstance. Or you're looking at people who are insanely talented, and no matter what their situation is, they would still produce, like Bijan's or Saquon. So what we're looking for when we're looking at these rookies is seeing, is there any instant Saquon level talent that is going to blow the door off for fantasy football in this upcoming season? And yeah, in the running back department, there are a couple. So obviously Genty, everyone knows Genty. We're not reinventing the wheel here. But when we look at some of the other ones, it comes down to what do you think the future of the running back situation is going to be league-wide and who's going to be investing where in it. So when we look at this, I believe the Saquon Barkley effect is going to dramatically impact the league. And what I mean by Saquon Barkley effect is running backs with explosive touchdown capacities who can just one play, it's over, touchdown. Now, we've seen King Henry do this for years, but the difference is while King Henry was doing it, the cover three was really prevalent. The cover three being essentially what Seattle was running with the Legion of Boom. 3 people off the line of scrimmage, and therefore only 8 close to the line of scrimmage, but 2 of them are corners, so you're not running into super high boxes. Well, since the league has shifted to be afraid of big plays, they're now running more cover 2 shells, which is putting an extra guy in the box and only 2 safeties deep. Therefore, you're in a spot where, you know what? If we're going to get explosion, we have to throw over the top. Well, they overcame that with the cover 3, and now they're here dropping the extra man into the box because they don't want to get beat deep. So that's the whole paraphrase of where we're at. That's why Saquon was able to go off like crazy. It was the defenses in which he faced against this year. So the belief is that knowing defenses are allowing less deep passes, unless you're an elite freak chase, you're going to have to run the ball to get these explosions. So that's where players that have a speed advantage, I give a major edge to. Saquon, Henderson, Genty, obviously. And welcome to the party, Bob. Super excited to have you here. I was breaking down what the belief in the Saquon effect will be and the speed of the running backs have the edge when we're talking about who to look for, even though you don't know their situations.
Yeah, I mean, I was chatting with a couple people recently, and I think that one of the most important things to keep your eye on too is some of these some of these backs that have some explosiveness, and to as like a just as an example here, like we were talking about Caleb Johnson, right? And Caleb Johnson isn't one of the most explosive backs. However, he does have the ability to potentially be a 3-down workhorse or 3-down back, 4-down back, workhorse back. But explosion is kind of an issue, but he works well in a zone blocking scheme. But in the format of underdog, he's being drafted.
I'm going JJ here. Just for the record.
I'd like Gibbs here.
I think we're going to have the same problem we got into on Monday if we take Gibbs, though.
We can take J. Jeff. It's fine. But
I just think we're going to the problem of you're going to not like that we have 3 running backs early.
That's fine. But again, you've locked yourself into Omarion Hampton, and I'm not there. So that's a you thing.
See,
and I think that I'm not there yet. But one of the things to mention, though, about a guy like Caleb Johnson is that in underdog, he is being drafted much higher than on DraftKings. So when we take a look at value, is that a guy like Caleb Johnson still has value here on DraftKings. So I'm not punting it, even though I think that, even though many people out there think that the lack of explosion could be an issue. But one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are comfortable passing on a guy like Caleb Johnson, particularly in underdog, but also in DraftKings, is the fact that guys like Devin Neal, RJ Harvey, Dylan Sampson are available so late. Bashal Tutin are available so late and provide that explosive capacity that Caleb Johnson doesn't. So I think that a lot of times Caleb Johnson does fit onto certain builds, particularly as like a 4th back that, if he doesn't work out, you didn't invest so much draft capital in him. But at the same point in time, when we're talking about explosion, guys like Trevion Henderson can't be forgotten. And Trevion Henderson in DraftKings is being drafted, when you compare him to Caleb Johnson and their values in underdog, they're a little bit closer in underdog, but there's a little bit more space between the two of them on DraftKings. So I think it's really interesting, Joe, when you bring up the Saquon effect and the capacity of runners to be 3 down guys or 4 down guys, or being super explosive and being able to make a lot of yards after contact. Guys, again, a guy like Achane, right?
I love that you bring up that 3 down back conversation in the NFL, because this is a really interesting topic. Of this running back group, there's really only 2 or 3 that can block. Most of them can't. And Henderson being one of the 2 that does. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you keep talking about Johnson, but Hampton is the one I believe is the better blocking. Johnson's all right. But when I look at this objectively, it's that ability to block on the 3rd down, which is really going to be able to keep you dominant in this league. Bob, I think I'm going Tyreek here.
I mean, if you want to have command of the board, that's fine, but I think Bucky's a better choice. Especially given what we know.
I'm not fighting Bucky.
Missed out on AJ there. It would have been nice to get AJ on this team. But with a secure,
would you have gone AJ over Bucky? Say that pick where AJ Brown went was Tyreek Hill. Would you have gone AJ over Bucky?
I would have went AJ over Bucky. I think that AJ has. Okay. I think that AJ Brown has a lot of value.
Looking at probably the Jigba on the comeback here. Either Jigba or Garrett Wilson or Mike Evans. Actually, Mike Evans might make sense. We might be able to do a Tampa build.
No, I don't think. I don't think that Mike.
I want to go receiver. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm just saying Mike Evans doesn't fit if you're planning on building Omarion Hampton, because I don't want to go Omarion and then Baker. It just doesn't fit.
So you don't want to do Tampa and Baker. I'm fine with that.
No.
So you look at I would look at either Higgins, Najigba, or Wilson would be the 3 I'd look at here.
I like the potential smash that Higgins can be. I think when we consider him,
I think he's one of the more underrated receivers.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Health-wise, like there was a draft I did the other day where I got Higgins as my 3rd guy because people are scared of his health concerns, and rightfully so. The guy does not play in so many games every single year, but the games that he does play in, he's attached to the offense that is most likely going to score the most points in any given game that they're in. And he's on a team that, as long as Joe Burrow, remember, going into last year, the concern wasn't about Chase. The concern wasn't about T. Higgins. It was about Joe Burrow's health with the wrist injury. Now with that to the side, one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. This also, the build here with Higgins and Jefferson gives you a lot of explosion, potentially plus 20-point weeks from your wide receivers every given week, which is something you need to perform well in DraftKings. What's up, Ant? How you doing?
So Ant, I want to answer your question. Was it Monday where I'm going all rookies? Yeah. The answer is yes. And it's going to be the same way today. But even then, the first 3 picks are established players.
But it's not going to be the same way today.
Sophomores and studs.
It's not going to be the same way today. It's not going to be the same way today.
Henderson's that 5th round pick, Bob.
Mainly,
I'm going to go receiver instead of Amari and Hampton.
I'm
taking Henderson.
That's fine. I am okay with Henderson, but I'm sharing with you that if a guy like Worthy is there or a guy like Rice is there, I want to go for one of those guys over Omari on Hampton.
I'm good. Yeah, we got Bucky. I'm good with that.
Knowing that Trayvon's there, getting Bucky instead of another wide receiver there does open that framework a little bit more because, like I said to you earlier, I do like the value of a guy like Devin Neal. I do like the value of Dylan Sampson, and I know you do too.
I would be
more than comfortable. I'd be more than comfortable.
Going back to our first round decision, I feel our team is stronger with J. Jeff and Bucky than having Gibbs and Brown.
Well, no, it would have been Gibbs and Hill. And I agree.
I still think it's stronger with J. Jeff and Bucky.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think that when we look at the top running backs, out of those 3 running backs, to be honest with you, the guy with the most that I'm most excited about in terms of upwards potential movement is Bijan. Like, we have to remember that, Ben Johnson really knew how to use these running backs. The offensive line was incredible. And same thing goes for Saquon. The line is incredible. They knew how to use them. The game scripts were really profitable for them. But I think a guy like Bijan gets lost in the shuffle. Yes, I believe they did lose some of the offensive line, but there is a propensity now for them to realize that, hey, we're winning games when we get Bijan the ball. And his touchdown numbers weren't at the level that a Gibbs and a Barkley were, because those numbers were insane. And we always talk about regression. Negative regression and positive regression. I think Bijan should be the number 1 running back taken this year, strictly because he does have upwards mobility, whereas Saquon and Gibbs, their numbers are most likely either going to either stay the same or dip, which, is good because they had tremendous numbers, but at the same point in time, it is something to consider. So I see your boy went off the board.
So, Bob, what do you think about Godwin instead of Rice?
They both have concerns. So I'm okay with either, to be honest with you, because the concern for Godwin is health, being up to speed. The concern for Rice is suspension. So I think that when you look at how both of them could shake down,
his injury was less severe then.
That it would be,
I wanted to know because you might have been really hard. You basically told me it's a 50-50. So I'm on side Rice as well.
Yeah,
with the side of Rice.
RM, here's the thing. Exactly. Last year on air, we were in a way, we weren't trashing T, but we were saying that, if you're in a redraft league, it's really hard to own T, just because just the amount of games that he plays, but the amount of game when he plays, he is one of our favorite wide receivers. Like to get a wide receiver with the production of T. Higgins in the 3rd round. And I would say the same for guys like Devontae Adams and Mike Evans as well. If Joe Burrow's here, Joe, I know you want Trevion, but if Joe Burrow's here,
it's Henderson. I'm not passing on Henderson.
I hear you. It just makes me a little bit curious.
Never built a quarterback high and liked it.
This is the lowest I have seen Joe Burrow go, just by the way. So I'm just really curious where he ends up. But Henderson's your boy.
I'm cool with that. But Bob, I mean, we've talked so many times over the years. The quarterback high very rarely pays itself off.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing about quarterbacks is that realistically speaking, I just told you guys, most likely the Bengals are going to be the top scoring offense in the league, most weeks against their competition. They're going to score a boatload of points. However, when it comes to value invested, and we talk about stacks, we do have 3 wide receivers that we are capable of stacking, and right now prioritizing the running back in the rookie class that we think has either the first most or second best explosion in the class is more important at this moment in time, given that the situation that he goes to is probably going to be very profitable for him.
So, guys, there is a massive storm going through Pittsburgh right now. So we might be flipping in and out on you.
Yeah, we're getting, I mean, in Pittsburgh, just like most of the Midwest, we're getting pummeled with rain today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday as well.
I mean, there's softball-sized hail in my front yard right now.
Softball? So, I thought it was ping pong ball. I gotta, when I get home, I'll take a look. I mean, it's been wild. But I will say, though, you're seeing there from the drafter there that Nico Ladd, Garrett, and Omarion Hampton, there are people out there that are very, very comfortable taking Omarion as their first guy. And there is, like we said, there is value in this rookie class, more so that, you don't have to burn a first-round pick on Genty. While Genty is an amazing asset, you really don't have to burn that first-round pick on Genty if you choose not to. I'm really liking that team, that combination of that's down at the back half of Achane with BTJ, DJ Moore, and Chris Olave. As I told you, Chris Olave's value is really, really up to the user. He has had 4 concussions, so he is the Tua of wide receivers. But I just can't continue. I just can't pass up the potential of 1,000-yard wide receiver who can potentially get 4 or 5 touchdowns in the 6th round. That's not something.
So, Bob, I'm telling you this right now. I don't know if he is going to slide to us. If Addison is still on the board, I'm going to go hard into a Minnesota stack.
Okay. I mean, just to be aware, though, they are still talking about Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota. So be aware of that.
I am 0% worried about him going to Minnesota.
I'm just saying, be aware.
That is 100% a negotiation ploy with the Steelers. Minnesota has outright said 3 times that McCarthy is their starting quarterback all year.
I'm okay with Addison. I'm also okay with Judkins. I'm really also okay.
I'm going to risk Judkins on the turn. If I can get Addison here and get the stack.
I'm also okay rolling out one of the rookie wide receivers very soon. I know people are going to think we're crazy for passing up.
I'd rather go Parasol than rookie.
So there's Addison. We could take Patty Mahomes here to stack with Rice.
Yeah, that's probably the right call.
Because he will go in the next 5-6 picks.
Yeah, he wouldn't have come back to us. That's the right call.
You got Henderson. You passed on Joey B to get Henderson, which I think is a smart move. With the potential of taking Judkins on the next pick or taking Pickens if he's there, I think could be a decent combination of.
If you take Pickens and then take Rodgers, it gives you a double hedge.
Yeah, I'm okay. I also like Ricky Pearsall. You guys know that I'm a big Pearsall guy. I think that he could absolutely explode this year. There goes Judkins. So that guy has 5 running backs now? 4 running backs? 4 running backs now.
He has 4 running backs, 1 receiver, and 2 tight ends. That's a crazy bad
I'm okay with laying into either Pearsall or George Pickens if he's there. There goes Pearsall.
So so Judkins, Pearsall went. So this is going to be Pickens if he's still there.
If he's still there, I doubt that they take another AFC North wide receiver here. This guy in the 3 hole. But it's just interesting to see.
We did that thing where we only took 2 divisions? That was actually a fun draft.
Well, I mean, we'll do that again. I absolutely enjoyed doing that. We'll do that in Best Ball Mania, I think. All right, here's Pickens. I'm okay with that. You guys,
by the time Best Ball Mania comes around, we'll actually know the schedule to do playoff correlations.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys watching right now, you guys know my personal opinion about George Pickens and the diva attitude and the problems that he has had. Just with penalties and getting open and all that stuff. But when he plays, he's another wide receiver that either is going to get you 7 or he's going to get you 18, 20 points. And having 4 of those guys on the team, I think that it really lands you into a potential to really explode on a week-to-week basis. We don't have a safe floor, and that's okay. That's okay because we're going for the win here. I think that our team
will be made up in volume. It's the long story short.
I think our team
we'll make
will
it up
easily
in volume.
will easily attack team number 1 fairly easily. You've got team number, what is that? Team number 11 there going after the Baker, Godwin, Evans stack. Did they take Evans as well?
They do not have Evans. Evans went.
All right. So Godwin, Baker stack. So Baker going in the 7th round, you know, he's been varying between the 6th and 7th round, depending on how the other quarterbacks go. You can see that there's one guy that took Lamar and Jalen Hurts. Again, if you're watching and you're using this as a learning process, just as we all do when we take in content and stuff, going Lamar and Jalen Hurts is really not a great plan.
No, it's a waste. It's a waste.
Here's the reason why. Both of these quarterbacks, when they go off, their differential in points is not very high. So, like, you know, if Jalen's going off for and having a great game and making your lineup, then you're most likely wasting a really great game from Lamar as well. So, you know, yes, you're eating into another guy.
Same with Burrow and Goff.
But you're also just putting yourself at risk that you're not going to have. I mean, laying into the hero running back with Gibbs is not a bad plan, but the running backs are going to start to dry up very soon, and you're going to be filling your roster with rookies, which is fine. We've done that before. But you do want to have at least 2 starting caliber players, in my opinion, in this early best ball. When we
so
move,
Bob, I'm kind of looking Hawk here if he's still on the board.
I'm okay with Hawk. For the viewers out there, there goes Travis Hunter there at 8-1. You know, we took him as early as 7-7 yesterday. Watch out for the rise of Travis Hunter, guys. He could end up by Best Ball Mania. He could end up in the 4th, 5th round in the same conversation as your Waddles, your Jennings, your Shakirs.
Oh, easily, because we'll know if he's a receiver or not. The risk with Hunter will be gone.
Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of a run. Nice.
How do you feel having a 2 tight end roster and that's it?
I would, in the early ones, I like to have.
I either want to do Caleb Johnson or Warren, and then you know, if it is Warren, I'm not a tight end.
I like to have 3 tight ends, to be honest with you, in this. I've seen too many times where you get, you know, your experience. I mean, again, all 3 of the tight ends could get injured at one point in time as well. But I think locking in that roster spot is a nice, as long as there's touchdown potential out of that tight end, because as you know, most of these tight ends aren't scoring a boatload of points otherwise.
Which Hawk will give you tight end potential. I mean, there is no doubt. So, would you rather go Warren or Johnson? That's fundamentally what this question is going to be. We're going to get one or the other, and either one's a rookie.
Yeah, I'd rather go Johnson in the 9th here if he's there.
I mean, you're looking at number 2 and number 3 players available on the board right now.
All right, what are the wide receivers on the board? I know Golden and Kuka just went.
Receivers are Kirk, Pittman, Shaheed, Mims.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather. So you want to go Johnson instead?
Yeah, go Caleb there.
I'd rather go there too.
To your point, Ant, I understand it. I mean, when we look at the problems for the potential landing spots of Hunter, you know, you're looking at potentially the Giants, where, you know,
I actually think the Giants are a great spot.
Let me just go through the potential landing spots, right? So you have potentially if it's a big if Tennessee decides to trade down, because they said they're not sold yet, and it could be a ploy to see how much draft capital they could get for the number 1 spot. But if Tennessee were to fall, that's not a great spot for him. He could go to the Giants. I think the Giants is an okay landing spot for him. The Giants did support Malik Neighbors to be a top-end wide receiver last year. There is a good chance that he could be successful with the Giants. Then you look at the potential landing spot of Cleveland. I don't like that landing spot for him if he were to end up in it on Cleveland. Then you kind of dip down a little bit more. Does a team like New England take him? Maybe. If he goes to New England, is it a great spot? I'm not 100% sold on that. Then you dip down the little board a little bit more. If he starts to fall and teams decide to trade up for him, does a team like Seattle go out there and get a wide receiver when they need offensive line support? Do some of the other teams like Dallas, maybe Dallas goes out and maybe they like Matthew Golden more. Maybe they take a chance on Travis Hunter. So I can see some landing spots working and some don't. And I think that's why that when we get to the Best Ball Mania season, instead of these early Best Ball drafts, I think when we get to Best Ball Mania season, that landing spot and knowing if he's going to be a starting wide receiver or not is either going to plummet that value or is going to push him up, like I said, into that mix of the Waddles and the Pearsalls and the Jenningses, because there's a lot of people out there. Again, I said this a couple weeks ago, that are not sold on San Francisco as an offense. So you're going to have a lot of people,
and there's valid reasons for that, by the way.
You're going to have a lot of people questioning the value of Juwan and Pearsall once we know the landing spot of these rookies. So, like, for example, if Igbuka lands on a great team, you're going to see him go up. If Luther Burden ends up on a good team, you could potentially see him climb, because there's a lot of if Igbuka lands on a team that's going to use him well, I could see myself taking him over Diggs, over Reed, over Ridley, over Myers, over Pickens potentially as well. So I think a lot of people are going to walk themselves into that. You just see another thing. Mason, there's news that came out the other day. Roto World reported it, where they're looking at a 1A, 1B situation in Minnesota. So you see Mason's value being pushed up. We were getting Mason real low before.
We sure were.
It's just something to keep your eye on as we turn to Best Ball Mania season over the coming month, as as those come out. So here, Joe.
Bob, for this pick, I am looking at Hollywood to extend the stack. The other choices are Mooney and Coleman.
I like the potential of Mooney or Coleman over Hollywood. I understand.
Which one do you prefer?
I understand either one. I'm okay with Mooney or with Coleman. One of the reasons
and then the
why
next pick will be McCarthy to make sure that we get him. Get that stack.
One of the reasons why I'm not so sold on Hollywood Brown as an asset in the stack, I get there's the conversation about the efficiency of the stack, right? I understand that. And I get that you want to have the stack that's going to get you the most points, but I don't see a conversation realistically where if there's a healthy Rice and a healthy Worthy, where Hollywood Brown is ever going to be relevant in a relevant.
That's fair. What Hollywood is he's a hedge on Rice.
He is a hedge on Rice, but not a very good one, I don't think.
Which also could be fair too. So yeah, again, McCarthy will be the pick here because I don't want to risk him not coming back to us with the two Minnesota we already have.
We might not get him here either.
That's kind of a hedge. We are in the midst of everyone getting their quarterback.
What's that? Yeah, that Geno pick's weird right there.
Bobby, cut out on me there.
I said that Geno pick is weird right there.
Does he have Myers or something?
No. I mean, at least he has Devontae Adams, I believe, so that's not terrible. I'm really curious. We might not get him. All right, there we go. Plop him on the team.
I'm curious why that went down. Also, curious why you're so curious over that, Bob.
Here's my recommendation here. If Kyle Pitts and Penix make it back to us, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it.
I don't want to go so Bob, here's what I was thinking in the back of my mind.
It gives us a little Atlanta
receiver running back here. So right now we are at 5 receivers, 3 running backs.
We do need another running back.
So I'm thinking ideal world of receiver running back. And then I'm okay with taking Freiermuth 2 rounds from now. Noah Gray is our last pick and Rodgers as a throwaway. Then all of our tight ends are stacked.
See,
with a receiver.
I understand where you're throwing out here that, tight ends, when they do hit, tend to hit with a touchdown. So that makes a lot of sense to
Yeah.
me, to tie up your quarterback with a tight end. But I just don't. I'm
But
just
it
not
also pairs them with a
sure.
receiver too,
But I'm
because we
just
have a
not sure
receiver on
about.
each of those respective teams.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the Rodgers hedge to the Steelers would be kind of the weird pick, but it also hedges the Vikings.
Yeah, so it's
I
like
see that.
we're in a double whammy there, and he's so low in terms of
Yeah.
when we can get him. This would be the round to solidify that number 4 running back and the number 6 receiver. We do it on
Mhm.
this turn here, and then after that, we just start playing rookie roulette.
All right, I see that. I like that. I like that idea. I like that idea at the very least. The only problem is it really submarines us if the Steelers end up taking like if they end up trading for Joe Milton from New England. I heard that that's a possibility if they take Jalen Milroe as well. But
See, I don't.
I
I
mean,
don't. If they do take Milroe, I don't think it's going to be high enough where they're going to force him in the lineup.
well, they might not force him in early. I mean that is relevant. But DK.
But no one ever takes Rodgers out. So I also look at that. So, but Bob, we're back to this tight end or this dead spot in the 12th round where receivers are bleak. And right now, not knowing they'll all be on the board, it's Thielen, QJ, Dobbs, Pierce, Hopkins, and Palmer and Coker.
I mean, all of them are basically the same kind of assets with, potentially Coker getting more receptions. Thielen,
I mean,
maybe
maybe you want to go Trey Harris or Higgins as rookies.
You're getting the running back here, you said.
I think I'd rather. There's no running backs that are jumping out. We're going to do both here on the turn. So your best running back right now is Garendo or Spears, unless you like Higgins or Harris better at receiver.
Take a chance on Harris. I think Harris is relevant enough.
Trey Harris it is, and then we'll take one of these off-brand running backs on the comeback. Like Garendo will still be here on the turn.
Like I said, I mean, I think I would have liked
out of those two, by the way.
I mean, I think I would have liked Pitts better there, to be honest with you, but but I get your point that you're saying about Freiermuth and stuff. Kincaid was still on the board. I forgot about that. I do like Kincaid a lot. Yeah, I think, does that guy have Josh Allen too? He built Coleman and Kincaid, but not Shakir, which tracks. Wow. What is okay?
I don't understand this one guy.
That's the lowest CJ Stroud has gone. There goes Shadur. Okay. All right.
So, but Bob, would you rather have Garendo or Spears? Back to the point. Or would you go rookie roulette?
I would take
the only rookie roulette is Devin Neal.
I would take Devin Neal.
Those are your three choices.
I would take Devin Neal. I would take him. I mean, we have 3 rookie running backs here, guys. Less rookies than we had last time, but at the running back position, it is a definite risk. When we look at risk rewards, there is a good chance with the draft capital that is going to be spent on running backs this year, that in this early best ball mania, we will have a team that really pushes for it towards the end of the year and maybe struggles a little bit at the beginning of the year. But again, there's so much value in taking one of these rookies over one of these vets that is probably most likely going to get replaced.
That's right. So you get the guy who's going to be on the roster, and then that's
one of the running backs that we touched on a lot, but we never picked, but we do talk about a lot, is Cam Skattebo. Now, Cam Skattebo is one of those players that at times feels like a little bit of a head case. One of his biggest assets is his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, to just go after people, right? Now, there is conversation that, at least for me, the biggest thing is, will he be able to do that at an NFL level? Will he be able to punish the way that he did at ASU? Because if he can't, his value will be extremely limited. If he can't,
he's a bust.
If he
he's
can,
an NFL bust.
if he can, the value of taking him, I would be more comfortable if he were in the 11th and 12th round. I'd be taking more shots at him in the 12th round, most likely. But I can see value in Cam, but I really am curious. The first couple of games that he's plays will tell us a lot if he's going to be able to be successful doing the same thing that he did at Arizona State, because he's a very good player. But I question some of those things, and you just see a big string of running back.
End up being he's just a great college player who can't step up.
Yeah.
Or will he? I mean,
and then you have the string after Devin Neal. You have a string of running backs that currently have jobs but may lose them, or may gain them.
Will lose them.
Benson is one of those guys that could gain them. Whitefield's on the way out. Ford probably on the way out. Chubb definitely on the way out. Dobbins already out. Big question marks here. So is this going to be Sampson or Freiermuth?
This is going to be Freiermuth and Sampson on the turn. That's pure ADP. If we have anyone on autopilot, we want to be able to get it through the other way.
And I'll tell you what, like, I'm actually surprised Guerrero went down, but
we literally drafted Muth at his ADP.
With the news that McCaffrey is supposedly fully healthy, we see Guerendo's drop continue to happen. But I still think that he's an interesting asset. I'm still willing to invest in Guerrero late. If he's late enough and I've already built a decent part of my team, I'm willing to invest in him. I also think that a guy like Hopkins doesn't really have a lot of value when you're looking at, what wide receivers you take. I'd rather take a guy like Noel in the 14th round here, who has the potential to really swing upwards, because it feels like Hopkins lost a step this past year. And he's he's not the player that he once was. And the way that the Ravens operate, it's, if you're not making a play to get in from the end zone about 15 yards away, then that belongs to Mark Andrews, that belongs to Derrick Henry, and that belongs to Lamar Jackson. And it doesn't belong to DeAndre Hopkins. So I see very limited potential with a guy like Hopkins.
Yeah, I see DeAndre Hopkins being what Beckham was there last year. Completely irrelevant.
I mean, I definitely see that as a possibility. I'm actually surprised that he went there.
So overall roster config, Bob, here's where we're at right now. 2 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, 6 receivers, 2 tight ends. That's 2, 5, 6, 1, 2.
All right.
So we got Noah Gray slated as the 3rd tight end, Rodgers as the 3rd quarterback, and just filling the rest with receivers and Martinez is kind of how I'm feeling this.
All right, but if Rodgers goes here, that's why I think that the build with Patrick Mahomes here in the 6th is not so bad if you've built a Kansas City wide receiver. You guys know how I feel about taking quarterbacks early. But if you're going to build one,
we also did hate on Mahomes quite a bit last year.
I do, and I have. But again, he was a bit overdrafted last year. Remember that. He wasn't spiking the weeks that we have seen him spike before. Then towards the back half of the season, when they started getting the ball to Xavier Worthy, when Travis Kelce started to be himself again, you started to see this offense do some other things. The primary problem with this offense is that offensive line, right? And the lack of the running game. Mm-hmm. Once Kareem Hunt got rolling in certain games, you started to see Patrick Mahomes' numbers be a little bit better. And so I'm just bringing that up as
you put a real running back on that team. I think they'll be very good.
In the 6th round, Patrick Mahomes has a lot more potential for me. And I was basically, Joe, I was more so shitting on him from a DFS perspective because he was always more expensive than he needed to be from a DFS perspective.
We were telling people to trade him away pretty aggressively in September.
Yeah, but understand, we were saying trade them for like Jaden Daniels, like aggressive.
That's also true. Yeah.
So that pans out. So here is going to be Rodgers, right?
Yep. And then 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 we're gonna have a debate on the back end of probably like Isaiah Bond, Damani Brown, Mike Williams. That'll probably be the debate on the. Maybe we'll even go to the iOS.
I like the potential of Mike Williams. I mean, he can at least potentially crack your lineup with a 470 touchdown game in a given week.
No, that's doable. And if he's fully healthy, he might be better than a QJ right now.
We haven't taken shots at Jalen Royals recently as well. Jalen Royals could be a nice option as well.
He's pretty far down the board. I bet we can get him on the next pick.
I know. I'm just saying. Jack Beck.
I mean, by the next, I mean the 18th round.
Yeah, the Jack Beck is another guy.
A guy that I took last round that we didn't talk about on Monday is the Mario Douglas. New England has so much money, and they've really only went to one offensive piece, and it was with
Hey, Joe, question for you. Where's Restrepo at? Where's Restrepo at in terms of the ADP here on DraftKings? Hey, Ryan, what's up, man?
221. He's 221.
Could be an interesting selection here.
So with Noah Mike Gray? Williams going, I'm looking either the iOS or Douglas.
Should we take Noah Gray here? Where's his value?
Oh, Noah Gray is like the last pick in the draft.
Okay.
So which would you rather go, Douglas or the iOS?
I'll take a chance on iOS, I think.
Yeah, I also like it's kind of a hedge on Higgins.
All right, Ryan.
Does have a little bit of a spotty injury threat.
ETN for Cup in Dynasty. Win now, full PPR. Both are flex pieces for me. Let's be frank, Ryan.
You're not playing ETN ever again, so anything you can get for him is a win.
Both of these assets feel like dying assets. So I'm concerned about both of these assets. However, when it comes to, again, Cup lost a step last year, and it was obvious towards the back end of the season. Maybe another offseason of healthy recovery will be great for him. ETN is dealing with what looks like a lot of baggage, a lot of injury, a lot of just Jacksonville's offensive line wasn't just moving the ball for them. So I think that if you need a wide receiver, you can definitely send Cup. You just saw in the draft that we're doing right now, Cup's value for most people is way higher than ETN's. So I would do this. I would move ETN for Cup, especially if I'm looking for a potential for a flex piece with 20 plus upside in a PPR league. I don't think ETN is there right now. Looking at where ETN's being drafted, most people, he's a forgotten asset. I'm taking as many chances as I can to stab a couple of people here and there in terms of ETN and maybe Pacheco a little bit, but they're not high on my boards for any reason. So if I could get this trade done, ETN for Cup, and I'd be comfortable with it being in my wide receiver room and my running back room was already okay, then yeah, I'd do that. And I think Joe would probably feel the same way, that movement. This is
get rid of ETN. Absolutely.
Very much in your favor. Mr. Magic, welcome. Rank these in order: redraft, PPR, Kyren, JT, Genty, Jacobs. So this is going to sound wild.
To me, this order is pretty easy, Bob.
I'm going to say my order. And you can share what your belief about that is. I think I would rank these as such: Genty, JT, Jacobs, Kyren.
100% agree. 100% agree.
One of the reasons why Genty is so high is there's that potentiality of some pass catching elements there. The only conversation that you can kind of make to yourself to say that, okay, I don't like Genty, I'd rather take JT, because there's a very good conversation you can make that JT could have a better season than Genty, is the fact that the Colts are not passing the ball efficiently. They're not an efficient passing team. Will Daniel Jones improve that? Most likely not, but it can get better. When I look at, I think you should take Noah Gray here, looking at all the tight ends that came off the board, Joe.
If you're worried about it, I'll do it. I mean, these are all just garbage picks anyway at this point. So I'll give you
not garbage. There's diamonds in the rough down here, but looking at this list, Magic, there's some things to think about, right? Is that the reason JT popped off really big at the end of last year was because of those struggles with passing, and that Richardson was not efficient on the ground, et cetera, right? So if you value the potential boom of those touchdowns, that's awesome. JT's up there. But the problem with JT is that if you continue to have an inefficient offense through the air, and you start to have problems on offensive line, their offensive line for running was a strength for them last year. If you were to have problems with that, then you could see that 30 carries or 26 carries for 97 yards and no catches isn't going to put the needle in your favor when it comes to JT in terms of redraft. I like JT, but I think that that's a primary issue to think about. When it comes to Jacobs, Joe will tell you lots of things about Jacobs, but here's the facts about Jacobs is that Jacobs
Hold up, Bob. I'll get into Jacobs in a minute. You got a choice between these three: Akine, Royals, or Restrepo.
I want Restrepo here. I like Royals, but we'll take a chance on Restrepo here. So when it comes to a guy like Jacobs, Jacobs has continued to be a continuous volume type of guy, right? And you saw once Green Bay decided, hey, we don't have to throw the ball 30 times a game because Josh Jacobs this is similarly to kind of like, JT in a way, will just rush it down your throat and get 3 touchdowns and be a beast. Both JT and Jacobs, with Jacobs having, Love recovered from the injury completely, the injuries that he suffered last year, he could potentially go back to throwing the ball 28 plus times a game. If that happens, you could potentially see the carries go down, but I think you're going to see a very comfortable amount of touchdowns for Josh Jacobs because once they get into the red zone, Josh Jacobs can be a beast in the red zone, although they do pass it to their tight ends and they do run those wide receiver screens. So JT and Jacobs' value is kind of very much to me in like a very similar conversation. And you'll see in these early best ball manias that JT and Jacobs are very closely tied to one another. Now you go down to Kyren. The problems with Kyren are what we know, right? Is that there's all this conversation continuously 2 years in a row surrounding Kyren's not going to be a bell cow. Kyren's not going to be a bell cow. Then he is a bell cow. The issue is that, again, Kyren is not the most efficient runner. We can see that in the stats. The stats back that up. The thing about Kyren is that, you give him volume and you put him in a good situation, he's going to be amazing in terms of fantasy production. You look at where he needs to be utilized, the Rams will get the ball in the red zone. Matt Stafford with Puka and Adams will get the ball to the red zone. The only question is will they put it in the end zone with those two rather than Kyren? The comfortable number that you want from Kyren in terms of touchdowns, I think, for the amount of carries that he has is probably around 12. If you could get 12 touchdowns totally out of Kyren, you'll be really, really happy. But the problem is he's not catching a lot of passes either. So when you look at the list, Genty has that kind of upside, but the scary part of it is that we don't know how he'll perform at an NFL level yet. We don't know what team he's going to be on. But if I'm in a redraft and I know that by then, I am going to be, really looking at how does that situation look. If Genty ends up on, let's say, on the Raiders, maybe you can walk yourself into a conversation where you put JT above Genty. If Genty ends up on the Cowboys or ends up on, if he ends up on the Cowboys, maybe you're worried about the offensive line. But
if he's on the Cowboys, he's a top 5 pick.
Again, there's a lot of conversation to kind
Bob nailed this completely. Genty might flip if he gets Raiders or Jet. If he gets Raiders or the Jets or something like that, he probably want to be a Jet. But core concept being the back two are the back two. It's Jacobs and Kyren at the end, but it probably goes Genty, JT off your top. So
yeah,
great question. Early for it, Magic, and we love it. We love the early Magic, baby.
And we'll go back up and look at this board when this draft finishes this next at our next pick here. We have 3 tight ends, we have 3 quarterbacks, we've got, it looks like 7 or 8 wide receivers and a healthy complement of running backs.
I'm going to take a running back with this last one. We'll end up with 3, 6, 8, 3.
Okay, got you. If Genty were to fall, if Genty were to fall past the Raiders, there would be a reasonable conversation that
No,
the
people would start
Bears
trading
would
up.
want to move up. There would be a lot of teams looking to move up. We've talked
People
about
might want to trade ahead of the Raiders as it is.
We've talked about this.
Genty, without a doubt, is the second or best player in this draft behind Hunter. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
And there's a lot of conversation to be had about this, Magic, that let's say the Steelers were like, you know what? Screw it. We need a running back. You've seen what Najee has
would
done.
never
He's
try to trade. They're going to do that next year for a quarterback. They're not doing that this year, Bob.
You know, you look at Tennessee. That, you know, do they fully trust the health of Pollard? Do they fully trust the health of, you know, maybe that's why there's conversation going on in Tennessee to say, like, hey, we're building an offensive line. Maybe we go after a later quarterback. That hasn't worked for us yet. But the conversation is, if we get a king's ransom and we can move and get Genty instead, and then
you fall back to 5 or something,
and then build a
like imagine this with the Raiders.
Joe, put our draft board back up. I want to talk about what we just had. So I like that Magic, that if the Bears, because the Bears are building a significantly better offensive line. And you know that Ben Johnson wants a running back, but you know that he doesn't have to invest really great draft capital to get a running back. So if they can move off DeAndre Swift, the Roschon Johnson experiment, how far do they want to go into that? If he goes to the Bears, I would be comfortable, very comfortable taking him over JT, over Jacobs. I still like Bucky a lot more. Call me crazy. But I think Bucky is a tremendous asset in terms of how he could grow within this Tampa Bay offense going into this year, even though they lost Cohen in terms of their offensive coordinator. I really do think that that's a position to be in. So Joe's going to bring back up the draft board here. He closed it out. Going to bring it back up in a minute. But, you know, talking about a couple other players that have been kind of polarizing and polarizing. Talking about some players that have been relatively polarizing for some people recently, and some players, you know, looking at the top half of this board, when you get to redraft season, if there's no injuries, this is pretty much the player capital that you're going to see in the first round. You're potentially going to see Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey sneak their way into the first round in 12-teamers as well. And you could potentially see Neighbors or Thomas drop out of the top 12 in terms of the first round. But I think we've done enough drafts so far that by the time Best Ball Mania season comes in, depending on how people want to build their stacks and how they want to approach the draft in general, this is pretty much the player pool that you're going to see in the first 2 rounds. First round, definitely. Now, the positioning is going to be slightly different, but, you know, these second round guys are there. I just want to speak a little bit about 2 players in particular right now after we get to this comment from Magic here. What are my thoughts on guys like Bucky, Brees, and Chase Brown and their productivity and where you see them ranking? So as I said, Magic, I am absolutely comfortable taking Bucky as high as the 2-1. Okay. If
I agree with that.
Maybe the 2-3 if Achan's not there. I really go back and forth between Achan and Bucky, and sometimes I like to take both. But I think that the coach speak that we're hearing, plus the production, plus the lack of changes on Tampa Bay's team outside of the offense coordinator, which is a big change, but also at the same time, the coaching staff is there currently has said, we love Bucky. We want to give Bucky the ball. Bucky did well for us last year. The offense looks good with Bucky. That's really good coach speak for a running back coming into another year in an offense that really hasn't changed much and was super productive last year. Then you look at a guy like Brees, right? Brees for me is a definitive guy that nobody really wants to have anything good to say about Brees Hall right now.
Which is
He's
fair.
sitting there. He's sitting there. Aaron Glenn is the new coach, and he's coming from Detroit. And Detroit has consistently used a series of running backs that it has been successful. But Detroit's offensive line has been much better than the Jets' offensive line. But what we know is that at this point in time in the season, coach speak has said, I feel like we have 4 or 3 good running backs already, and Breece Hall is one of them. Here's how I can see this playing out. If you're drafting Breece with a high pick, you're taking on similarly assumed risk as a guy in a different way as a guy like Ken Walker or Kamara, but a round or 2 earlier. Why I say this is that Ken Walker deals with a lot of injuries, but he is similarly could be as explosive as Breece Hall, as we saw when Breece was healthy. When it comes to Kamara, we know that Kamara's biggest thing that he does well is pass catching out of the backfield, and he's not a primary rushing threat, but a primary pass catcher, and he does really well at that. But his age is catching up to him. He didn't have a lot of 20-point games last year. He had that big 50-point game, 45-point game. So if I can get similar value in the round or 2 later, and I could attack DJ Moore or Marvin Harrison or Garrett Wilson or Xavier Worthy, where I might be taking Breece Hall, I would rather take one of those guys unless I planned on building a stack with Justin Fields, because that's how that could work. Justin Fields is not throwing the ball elitely downfield. If he's just, dinking and dunking his way down the field, Breece is going to be very valuable. But again, Breece may have lost a step. I'm not going to say it yet, but he might have lost a step. And there are other assets that the coaching staff does like. Do I think that Braylon Allen or Ike Davis is better than Breece Hall? I don't. But I do think that there is inherent risk with taking Breece Hall in the 3rd round, especially when he's surrounded by a good amount of wide receivers that I'd rather have on my team than Breece Hall, and get the same potential value in Trevion Henderson in the 5th round. Then you go to
Magic. Here's the problem with the 3 of them.
Hold on, let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish. Just a thought on Chase Brown. The fantasy community, most of the fantasy community that I have seen is not fully in on Chase Brown. There were things that we saw Chase Brown do well last year. There were things that we saw Chase Brown grow in the small amount of sample size that we have from last year. But was it enough? We believe that it wasn't enough. And we believe that there is a very good chance that the Bengals will draft at some point in the draft a running back to pair with Chase Brown and or take Chase Brown's role on the team. Now, investing 4th round capital in Chase Brown, again, you have that inherent risk. He is on an explosive offense. That is true. But let's look at it.
That's his upside.
That's the upside, but let's look at it. When we talk about the explosive nature of the offense, we're talking about the explosive nature of the passing offense, where Joe Burrow is throwing the ball 37, 40 times a game, where they're only running 57, 67 plays, something like that, right? Now, there's a problem there that if Chase and Higgins are fully healthy, how much does Chase Brown figure into that game plan, game script? He's going to, but how much? And then if they get another asset, there's an issue. And I think that when we look at the question marks surrounding everybody, all at all points in time in the draft, if your playing time is already up for conversation, that's bad. If you're drafting guys in the top 4 rounds and you're already discussing that their playing time or their role could be diminished when targets are king, when attempts are king, why would you want to invest in that? Right? So the coach speak about Bucky is much more positive than those surrounding the other 2 players. So that's why I have Bucky higher.
And so first of all, Bucky should be higher. Bucky should be the first one, all this. So if you look at Bucky and Breece, there's only at most 5 running backs in this upcoming NFL draft that are on the field better than them. That's it. For Chase Brown, you can go all the way down to Trevor Etienne and see that they are more talented than Chase Brown.
That's bold of you.
Roughly 20 rookies entering this league that are more talented. I'm not even sure he's more talented than Zach Moss. So
you're a Zach Moss truther, so that's fine. I expect.
I am a Zach Moss truther, but the point being is, he, of all of these guys, Kyron being in the same category, Mixon, that could easily be outkicked by the draft, he's the first of the list. So right now, pre-NFL draft, I have him graded as a 10th rounder because of the risk of him never playing a snap. And that's, to me, not outlandish.
Joe, I would disagree with you that, they're not going to all of a sudden decide not to play him. But
they're a running back system. They always have been. If he's not the guy, he's not the guy.
If you love Chase Brown, here are the things that you're looking at last year. If you love Chase Brown, this is what you're looking at last year. You're looking at games where he had 27 carries, 22 carries, 25
when Higgins
carries,
was hurt and Moss was hurt,
carries.
He was the dude.
That's what we're looking at. You're looking at games where they're playing catch-up ball, where he had 13 carries but 9 receptions on 11 targets. So again, if his role, here's the thing. If we get to Best Ball Mania season and Chase and the Bengals have not drafted another talented running back in the first 4 rounds of the draft, then maybe Chase Brown in the 4th could be a potential value there. But again,
I'll give you that. If he misses the landmine, sure.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. One of the issues with Chase Brown's value is that, let's look at this as a microcosm before we get to Ali's question here. When we look at, and this plays into what I was just about to say, Magic, is that if you're sitting down here at the 10, 11, 12, you do not want to build 2 question marks at running back to start your draft. This is why I say this. If I'm taking a chance on CMC, then I'm not taking a chance on Chase Brown. If I'm taking a chance on Achane, I am not taking a chance on Chase Brown. If I'm taking a chance on Achane, I'm not taking a chance on Breece Hall. Again, the inherent value of this part of the board here is that you could potentially get 2 stud wide receivers still, and then come back with a question mark of a running back. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I'm not investing super high in 2 question marks in my running back room in this part of the draft, because you look at the talent there, right? CMC, talented, great player. Henry, excellent, great player. HN, great. Breece could be great. Chase could be great. But you got to make your decisions. And when you look at CMC with his ADP here, before we get to Ali's question, if you're pinpointing that CMC is your guy and you trust what the Niners are putting out there, I think the best possible way to go about CMC is to do what the drafter did in the 10 position. You take a question mark with super high upside, because the only question mark about him is his landing spot right now, and you pair him with CMC, and then you hammer wide receivers. You don't take David
Magic.
Montgomery.
I come from a different perspective. I believe that you should never take a questionable running back. I believe running back should be your foundation and the floor of your roster. You take the high upside, all or nothing guys at receiver, especially in best ball. But given everything they're saying about his injury, CMC is right in the middle of the range of what I would feel to be acceptable for him as current ADP. I'd probably be comfortable with him. Like, if I had to take him at 9, I'd be okay with that. He certainly isn't slipping out of the second round. I think he's right at an acceptable point, and I think that that's okay. So that's how I would go at it. And Ali asked a good question here for trade.
Yeah, like I said too, Joe, the value of CMC is, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago before, continued news comes out about CMC. But again, the inherent value built in is that CMC has 20 plus point upside.
Oh, he
And
does. Yeah.
to potentially have 2 running backs on your roster at that point in time with 20 plus point upside is nice. But there is that, again, there is that inherent risk. And a lot of people, again, Christian McCaffrey, I talked about this, that I would be more than comfortable taking Christian McCaffrey in the 3rd round if he were to fall, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't take him in the 1st round, but I would consider and continue to consider doing it in the 2nd round as long as I build my team with enough. Because I think here's the issue is that when you're drafting guys like Achane, Chase Brown, Hall, and CMC, you're drafting them with the opinion that they are not going to get hurt, that they are going to play and they are going to go in and go at it. So what I'm going to do later on in the draft is I'm going to take high upside rookies to pair with these guys, because if they do go down, I want one of my rookies to step in. What I'm not doing when I draft a CMC, an Achane, a Chase Brown is taking Aaron Jones or taking Jordan Mason, another back in a split backfield. I want a guy that's going to come out and just really go at it. And it's fair, right? CMC, it's fair to not want to roll the dice on him again. He does have value, but like I said, I would rather take Bucky. I would rather take JT. I would rather take AJ Brown. I'd rather take Ladd. I'd rather take
players that
guys.
don't have the risk at the running back position. And I think that's
so Allie,
to answer your question here, yeah, the amount of starters you have in a league certainly changes the way you look at trades. If you're doing a 2-to-1 trade, you almost always want to be on the side with the side that has the better upside coming to you. It's all about the top end talent and kind of your bench be damned. Sell that middle class of your roster to get the tops of the elites. That's what you should do in shallow starting leagues.
Yeah, and if I'm you, Ali, and I'm looking, if this is I'm not sure if it's a dynasty, but in terms of like, we'll talk more. We'll be always talking about trades. Us.
Oh, love trades.
But when it comes to what I'm looking for, if I'm in a league that's shallow, because I've been in leagues like this before. Typically speaking, everybody will have the same kind of way of viewpoints as Joe just said. They're going to want to go when they're entering into trade negotiations. They're going to want to go after the top echelon of your team first. First and foremost, they're going to attack your Amon-Ra's. They're going to attack your Malik Neighbors. They're going to attack your Devontae Adams. They're going to attack your T. Higgins, right? Then what they're going to do is try to bite you down, right? And see how much that person is going to cost you. If knowing that this is a dynasty shallow league, I think where I think if this is affected the most is that the values of guys like Neighbors, Nakua, Gibbs, Jefferson, Bijan, guys like that are out of this park. It is going to be almost impossible for you to go out and attack one of those guys without giving up a asset that you really like to. So for example, in a shallow league like this, it's probably very common for you to see trades like Jefferson for Nakua. And that just is something, be like, hey, I like this guy more. I see more potential in him. I'm going to just do a 1v1 or a Jefferson plus Odunze for Malik Neighbors or something like that. I'm not saying that's something that's going to happen, but I'm saying like trades like that are probably very common here. And it's much different approach to how to get the trade done. And I think sometimes you have to give up guys you like to get guys that you like better based off the situations that you're in. And it's tough. It's real tough. And when it comes to how do I value the first rounds picks in a shallow league, a lot more than if it wasn't. I mean, you're looking at basically speaking, depending on how big your bench is, Ali, you're potentially looking at in a dynasty league that everybody drafted from the end of the second round onward is irrelevant. until proven otherwise, right? So like you're going to have people hit like your Nakuas and whatever, but most likely those guys are going to be found on the waiver wire, et cetera, and you're just going to be able to pick them up. And I think that when it comes to shallow leagues, that there's a lot more weekly player turnover. And the ones that I've been in, that people are more than okay letting go of an asset that's going to have a multi-week injury, depending on how the bench is, especially a shallow bench.
Yeah, they only have 7 bench spots, so
yeah. So
hopefully that gives you some good answers and guidance there, Ali.
And we'll
love
talk.
when you guys shoot us questions.
We'll definitely talk more about this next week, and we'll talk about like how, because here you're looking at 20 roster spots. In your league, you're looking at 14. So most of the guys at the back end of this are not going to be drafted. The 2-3 tourney is always so crucial, just so many range of outcomes for those guys. In a redraft league, absolutely. In Dynasty, yes, but if you're only having 7 bench spots, it's harder to think about, maybe people are letting go of the Waddles, the Debos, and they're going to be on the waivers and such like that. It's always an interesting conversation to have, but we will continue this conversation when we come again to Monday, 3:45 Eastern. So we'll be with you Monday, 3:45 Eastern. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be talking more best ball drafts, more trades, and more of your questions on Monday, 3:45 Eastern. Thanks, Magic. Thanks, everybody.
Fantasy football fans unite. On July 29th, we're going to be hosting a fantasy football cruise. There's going to be an array of fantasy experts discussing every team in the NFL. Who are their favorite players? Who's the best sleepers? Who are the landmines? A best ball draft so you can dominate your league. This is going to take place on the Margaritaville Islander at Sea, where you and your +1 are going to get all of these benefits. A stateroom with a balcony, the all-you-can-eat food package, the premium deluxe beverage package, the best entertainment on board, en route to 2 of the prettiest beaches in the world at Key West, Florida and Cozumel, Mexico. Surrounded by fun and getting this world-class fantasy football experience, we can't wait to see you July 29th on this elite business cruise.